Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm Professor Spira, and welcome to this special presentation about addiction to pus and mucus-forming foods. And this is an extension of a Mucusless Diet Healing System e-course that I'm currently working on that will take people directly through the lessons of the Mucusless Diet Healing System book by Professor Arnold Ehret. But this is getting a bit deeper into more contemporary concepts about what it means to be a pus and mucus addict, what it means to practice the mucusless diet, what a practitioner of the mucusless diet can look forward to going through as they go through the process of getting away from pus and mucus forming foods. There's a great deal of social issues that take place, emotional issues, spiritual issues. It's all part of the process of totally transforming your reality toward one of a mucus-free existence. So that's what this presentation is about. I've actually wanted to do this for quite some time, and I'm will try to not get off too far on tangents, but this probably will take a little bit of time to go through a lot of this. But a disclaimer, the content of this presentation is strictly for informational and educational purposes only. If you choose to use the information on yourself, the authors, content creators, and presenters take no responsibility for your actions, decisions, or the consequences thereof. The information is based upon the opinions, research, and experiences of its contributing authors and is not intended to be medical advice, medical diagnosis, or the treatment of any disease. So you can read the rest of that yourself, but basically this is, I sort of treat this as any other course that I would teach, like a college level course or something you might teach in high school. But I've been an instructor on the college level, so I kind of tend to craft my presentations in that manner. But anyway, this is just disclaimer, food for thought. And if the information, if you feel it and it makes sense to you and you can benefit from it, that's what it's here for. Beautiful. If you don't dig it, don't turn away or don't watch it. Or comment. We can have a civilized discussion if there's a difference of opinion, of course. But stages of addiction. So there's a lot of classic addiction models, and ever since I started practicing the diet, I drew on these concepts. I used to love watching any documentary I could find on addiction to all types of different drugs and addiction to, there's a bunch of documentaries on meth and, all kinds of different substance abuse, alcohol, all of that. And I just used to really, because I could identify it with it, especially when I started going through the Mucusless diet. I really deeply identified with the process that people had to go through that were getting off of these other drugs. And the thing is, since pus and mucus forming foods, that's the foundation of all addiction, in my opinion and from my experience. Everything else is sort of cradled in mucus and pus, and we're in a mucus and pus driven society, so it's not identified to be an addiction until now. So this is that shift, that paradigm shift toward understanding that if you can deal with the pus and mucus addiction, all of these other addictions, they're all they basically are under this cradle of mucus addiction. So I draw on some of these classic theories and models of addiction. There's, I kind of adapt the concept. I guess I was too quick. I kind of adapt these models to a pus and mucus reality, the pus and mucus addiction. So just in general, I didn't list all of them. There's so many different conceptual models and psychological models, physiological. A couple of them, there's the moral and the temperance. And some of these models have to do with theories of treating, various addictions. You have the moral or the temperance approach that, if it's morally wrong, then you can abstain from it. Oftentimes that I find that's as a model, a lot of people criticize it and it doesn't really work. I found it to not work because you can know that something is morally wrong. You can know that something is wrong. You can know that killing animals when you don't need to eat them to survive, you can know on an intellectual level that that's wrong. Is that guaranteed to get you over the hump of your addiction to pus and mucus, knowing that you're creating all this bad karma, eating all these dead animals? No. Some people, for a short period of time, they might develop the desire to want to get off of pus and mucus based on their feeling of not wanting to hurt animals, animal welfare. But when you're talking about pus and mucus, it goes way, way deeper than just some moral kind of idea of what's right and wrong. This gets down into the core of your tissue system, the different thing. Disease, and there's personality models, social education, cultural habits, etc. Then there's blended models that tend to blend these various aspects of these various models into one, and I guess what follows would maybe be considered as more of a blended type of model. And the other thing about models is, as I present this, some people really take models too far. They because they want to adhere to something. That's one thing why people have trouble understanding the transition to the mucusless diet, is because it's not absolutist. Some people's personalities, they're attracted to absolutism. They want to know, okay, these are the foods I can eat. These are the foods I cannot eat. This is what I must do. This is what I cannot do. And that's not, reality doesn't operate like that. And so to be successful with the transition, you have to sort of get away from these absolutist type of things. So this model is not meant to be absolutist. It is meant to essentially expand your mind, get you to think differently in a way that perhaps you haven't thought like this before about pus and mucus forming foods. Maybe you've thought like this about other things. You might have thought like this about alcohol or weed or crystal meth or something, but you might not have applied this kind of thinking to pus and mucus and give it that type of importance, that level of seriousness. Like, this is a serious addiction. This is a serious problem that needs all of one's effort and concentration in order to overcome successfully. So primary influences for the following presentation: you got the Kubler-Ross model, the 5 stages of grief. A lot of people are familiar with that. You have 7 stages of addictions, and I couldn't even find an initial person. I don't know if maybe the Kubler-Ross model is one of the first that then later things like the 7 stages, but there's a million 7 stages of 7 stages of meth, 7 stages of alcohol addiction, 7 stages of whatever. And there's a ton of variations on that. And so I find some inspiration in some of these different variations of it, but I pretty much create my own thing. Then 12-step programs, the influence in this particular presentation of 12-step programs are not the details of the classic Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. I'm not really getting into those type of steps, but just the idea and the process of a 12-step program or a program of liberation from that which pains you. You know, that kind of thing. And I have to put it on here because just the idea of it is something that I really used over the years in my own practice of the mucus diet. I treated myself as if I was part of a 12, you know, like some type of 12-step program or some kind of, you know, program of liberation from one's addiction. You know, I took it that serious. And so that's why I include that here, although a lot of details aren't necessarily similar. And of course, the foundation for those of us that know about Arnold Ehret's work is the definition, Ehret's definition of human illness. You know, every illness, Ehret uses the word disease, but I'm putting illness here for this at this moment. But every illness, no matter what name it is known by medical science, is constipation, a clogging up of the entire pipe system of the human body, with mucus, pus, uric acid, toxemias, etc. My and Ehret and other people that have experienced the Mucusless diet have come to find that the foundation of human illness, the foundation of psychological illness, the foundation of addiction itself is pus and mucus poisoning. If you don't believe me, then take pus and mucus out of the equation. Take pus and mucus out the equation. You can't unless you've transitioned because you will be back on pus and mucus. If you don't accept and adhere to the transition, believe me, you're coming right back, you know. And so we're gonna get into a little bit of that. If this is the first time you're hearing about the Mucusless diet or anything along these lines, you definitely want to get the Professor Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System. This is a version that I just released, annotated, revised, and edited by Professor Spira. It's an ebook, but whatever form you get the book in, get the book. You can get it in hardcover, whatever. But this is, you know, one that I released that actually it deals with some of the stuff that I'll be talking about. And then what really deals with some of the stuff I've been talking about is my book, Spirit Speaks, Dialogues and Essays on the Mucusless Diet Healing System, volumes 1, 2, and 3. So a lot of the consciousness in this type of approach about treating mucus and pus like an addiction, you can find at in that book. And oddly enough, at the time of publishing this video, you can get these books on sale. And together, I think I got these for $19.99 together. So if that interests you, take advantage. Definitions of mucus or pus addiction. So these are some definitions. Mucus addiction is a state of periodic or chronic overstimulation produced by the repeated consumption of pus and or mucus-forming foods. Now, when I say overstimulation or stimulation, in general, we have the opinion that mucus and pus-forming foods are not nutritious. They don't give you energy. They stimulate you. So what a lot of people think is energy from food is actually stimulation from food. And so this is a total paradigm shift from standard Western dietetic doctrine. So this is where we're starting at. Its characteristics include an overpowering desire or need or the compulsion to continue eating pus, mucus by any means necessary. A tendency to increase the amount over a period of time. A psychic or psychological and generally a physical dependence on the effects of the pus and mucus. The detrimental effects on the individual and on society. And so this is sort of, I adapted this from a definition of addiction from 1957 World Health Organization. But basically, that last piece, detrimental effects on the individual and on society. We have to begin to connect the dots. We have to connect pus and mucus eating with the devastation that we see every day on the news. The murdering, the killing, the kidnapping, the war, the drone strikes, just all of these things. It is the logical conclusion of a society and a global culture that is totally addicted to the overstimulation of pus and mucus. I mean, it's I'm just totally convinced of that. You know, pus and mucus eating is the foundation of all of these world problems, and that this is the answer for a peaceful world, because you can't have a peaceful world as long as everything is totally out of balance. You know, humans aren't meant and aren't biologically built to eat that animal flesh, and so everything is totally unbalanced, and we see that. You know, we see that devastation, and for those that are brave enough to open their eyes, or for those that are going through it, because some people are well, there's this concept of privilege, and people being in a privileged position that don't have to see economic devastation, or don't have to see war, or don't have to open their door and worry about you know, somebody running at them with a gun or a drone strike. You know, as if those people are in a privileged position. I would say that those people are only privileged insofar as they practice the Mucusless Diet Healing System. Because if you're if you're in that position, yet you're using that environment or your life situation to fill up on more pus and mucus, then I wouldn't consider that to be a privilege, in my opinion. Move on. So some more definitions that are pertinent. Mucus habituation or habit is a condition resulting from the repeated consumption of pus and or mucus. Physical dependence is a state of being that is manifested by mucus and pus forming foods, causing specific withdrawal symptoms that emerge when not regularly consumed. So there it is. You know, you're going to have withdrawal. And in the world of detoxification, that's, you know, the withdrawal symptoms tend to be also called detox symptoms. I like talking about it in terms of addiction, because that's often when people talk about detoxification. Oftentimes people are only detoxing for a short period of time with a really specific goal in mind, and so they're not trying to permanently get off of pus and mucus. They're just, you know, I just want to clean myself up a little bit, not too much. I don't want to get too clean. I just a little detoxification, a little 21-day, whatever, a week, a little bit of fasting. You know, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this systemic addiction to pus and mucus. And so when you start to decrease or get away from those foods at first, you're gonna go through withdrawal. You know, you're gonna crave, as long as those poisons are still in your system, you're gonna crave it. You know, that's the only reason you'll crave meat. In a normal kind of clean situation, you'll never crave dead animal flesh. You know, you won't crave yeast and cheese and breads. I mean, you're not going to crave that stuff unless you have those poisons still inside you. And so that's what we try to do on the Mucusless diet, get rid of these poisons. Tolerance is the body's physical adaptation to mucus, or greater amounts of mucus are required over time to achieve the initial effects as the body gets used to and adapts to the intake. So, yeah, tolerance of pus and mucus forming foods, it gets to the point where, I mean, in our society is so pathologic that we actually have events, hot dog eating contests and all of this nonsense. We actually have events that reward people for how tolerant they are to poison, for how tolerant they are to pus and mucus. How much can and pus and mucus always will filter down into these other issues like the alcohol. I mean, it's hard. It's hard pressed you find an alcoholic fruitarian, that somebody has been eating nothing but fruit for 30 years, and then they're like, "Yeah, but I'm still on alcohol." It's not really gonna go down like that. So this tolerance principle is really something that it's one of the things that creates this illusion that humans are meant to eat pus and mucus, because we have developed physical existences that have gotten so used to being diametrically opposed from nature that we can just sort of glide on and appear to be happy and everything is all well and good. And then, but the result of that situation is we have, might have insane crises, or when there is an epidemic of illnesses and eliminations around the world, it can, you have that plague type of situation, because everything has become so much worse because we have suppressed our elimination, suppressed our symptoms, and that only makes things worse in the long run. Although in the short term, everything feels great and feels fine, and it's just social. It's socialized. This is just how we are. Go to McDonald's and go get a milkshake and go home and lay down. I mean, it becomes part of the fabric of life. Definitions continue. The addictive potential of a mucus-causing food varies from item to item and from individual to individual. So this is something that is important for you to understand when you start making transitionary selections. What foods can you eat that do the least amount of damage, that are the least addictive, yet still fill you up, still give you that kind of thing that you feel as you're trying to get off of the habit of mucus and pus eating, especially if you're an overeater like I was. It was a big deal for me to find foods that would allow me to get that mucus boost, but were not as bad as what I had eaten before.